Do Westerners really just show up to people's houses unannounced, or is that just a movie thing? Pretty common before cell phones. Last time it happened to me was probably 2000. Before cell phones, yes. Now people call in and say, "I'm in the area. Can I stop by?" Some do. Some don't. I personally never receive unannounced visitors. Whoever knows me well enough knows to call or text before. In my culture, Pakistani, it's the opposite. It's considered rude to announce before coming, because it gives the impression that they think they are too important and wish to let the hosts know to prepare their home or whatever. Sometimes relatives even show up unannounced and stay for a week or so. It used to be a very common thing. Then the internet came. My upbringing versus today described perfectly. https://m.youtube.com/watch v equals 5 seasno aw2k1i. Going over to someone's house unannounced and unplanned was a thing back when I was a kid in the 70s and the 80s. They would show up, ring the bell, and they would usually say something like, "I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd drop by and see how you are." Then we would gather around the dining room table for some noshes and coffee and talk for a while. If you've ever seen comedian Sebastian Maniscalco's bit on this, he explains it perfectly. This wouldn't go over today. In fact, yesterday someone knocked on my door. I looked out the peephole and I didn't recognize the person knocking. So, I didn't answer. Come to find out that somehow the trunk of my car was open, and he was trying to let me know. This was super common in the 80s and 90s. Cell phones stopped that. Depends how well you know each other. In some places like apartment complexes where people live close together, there may be unintentional casual mixing anyway in the common areas. It's not too much an extension to drop by and knock on someone's door. In some dorm rooms or apartments where everyone is friends with one another, they may even leave doors open while gaming, drinking, etc. The party spot was a rather common feature back in the day when I was young. Not sure if they do that anymore. Where I grew up, it was a bit like exploring in Tears of the Kingdom. I just showed up, walked in and looked around. Your personal thing. I'm European and a friend just showed up, said hi for 10 minutes and moved on because he was in the vicinity. It was a thing. My father-in-law does it still occasionally. It doesn't bother me and I don't see it as rude as others here. He just looks after the kids while my wife is happy she can do other things. The only people that do this are family, good friends, neighbors and people trying to sell something. The vast majority of the time people are calling first. What you see in TV, movies is mostly done to save time. It's a thing that used to happen before cell phones all the time. It's much rarer nowadays. It used to happen a lot. Not since texting became the primary contact. People in the South love doing this. They'll even stop by someone's house because they recognized someone else's car in the yard and they wanted to catch up with them. It's annoying. Occasionally it happens, but it's considered rude. Tends to be mother-in-laws or parents who figure they can come over any time because it's their adult kids. Occasionally a pushy family member or friend. It's much more typical to call, text ahead of time, either the day of or days ahead, checking if person will be home and okay with a visit. Would still be common enough in rural areas of Western countries. In towns and cities it's a big no-no and it's expected that you call or text first. There are a few people in my life that know they can show up at my place anytime, day or night. And they do. And I love it. But those are my inner circle people. The ones that I'm able to share comfortable silence with or sit around with for hours talking about everything and nothing all at the same time. A majority of people in my life either A. never been to my apartment or so much as know the general neighborhood I live in, or B. always call or text before coming over. It rarely happens anymore, but I remember when I was growing up in the 80s, 90s. Before cell phones, one of the mothers in the neighborhood wanted people to call and ask before showing up at the house to see if her kid could play. The other parents were like, "Lol, no," and she lost that battle very quickly. See here. Growing up in the 90s, it was much more of a thing aunties, uncles or good friends of my parents who happened to be doing something close by would stop in to see if we were home. A cup of tea, a biscuit and a chat would always be offered when it happened. Interestingly as well, when the landline rang, it was often obvious who was ringing. 7 p.m. on a Thursday, it was either Uncle 1 or Uncle 2. Dinner is finished and they've got a weekend project to discuss and looking for helpers. Monday evening it would be my mom's sisters, debriefing about the weekend and the week ahead. Sunday afternoon, likely my grandparents. In the modern era of mobile phones and SMS etc., it's much less common for an unannounced visit. There's almost certainly at least a check-in text beforehand. Culturally, at least in my part of house, is that if someone wants to pop in for a chat and you're around, then absolutely you accept. We will have a cuppa or a beer and use it as an excuse to stop doing whatever else was happening and relax, especially if there's literally any sport on TV at the time. Bonus points if you were in the middle of doing something where an extra pair of hands would be useful. The visitor has just drafted themselves. Tea and biscuits or beer are always offered in compensation for such efforts.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Ericast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.